Hey, Zach here. Today I'm at the Patapsco State Park and we're going to be checking out the trail here as well as the Thomas Viaduct, one of the oldest railroad bridges in the world. Come along with me, there's going to be a lot to see. Just outside of Baltimore lies the small community of Relay, Maryland. This quiet town, filled with charming homes and tree-lined streets, has a surprisingly rich history, as it was a key hub in the early days of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Indeed, the town of Relay likely wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for the railroad. While the B&O has come and gone, the railroad presence in Relay is still quite active. The neighboring St. Denis Marks station is a popular site for train watchers. And just southwest of town lies one of the most remarkable feats of early American engineering, the Thomas Viaduct, which still sees rail traffic today. We'll see more trains going over this historic bridge in a little bit. For now, let's look a little more in depth at the history of this area. In 1830, the B&O completed its first 13 miles of track, from Baltimore to Ellicott's Mills, the present-day Ellicott City. In the first years of operation, horses were used to pull essentially retrofitted carriages. Because a single horse couldn't traverse the whole 13 miles, a multi-purpose structure was built at roughly the halfway point in the line, acting as a restaurant, inn, and a stable. It was here that horses would be switched out for the rest of the journey. This became known as the Relay House, and the town that grew up around it became known as Relay. In 1830, Peter Cooper developed a coal-burning locomotive suitable for B&O's tracks, the first locomotive built in America. It was known as the Tom Thumb due to its small weight and size, and it featured an upright boiler and a geared drive. During its demonstration run, it carried B&O directors from Baltimore to Ellicott's Mills at an impressive 14 miles per hour. You may have heard of the legendary race between the Tom Thumb locomotive and a horse-drawn carriage, where the locomotive broke down and lost the competition to the horse. This race was supposedly carried out on this stretch of tracks through Relay, Maryland. There is even an exhibit based on this race at the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore. While this tale is ingrained in our national folklore, it is unknown whether this race actually ever happened. What is true is that the overall success of the Tom Thumb proved the viability of steam locomotives, forever altering the trajectory of railroad development. Here we see a loaded coal train coming out of the Patapsco State Park and making its final run toward Baltimore, on the same line that the Tom Thumb made its historic first run. By 1835, the Washington branch of the B&O had been completed, and the use of horses as power had been discontinued. The Relay House retained its name and its importance on the railroad, primarily because it was located close to the point where the new line met the old. This positioning made it the second busiest station on the line, trailing only Baltimore itself. Just southwest of the relay house, to carry the Washington branch over the Patapsco River Valley, the B&O constructed what was, at the time, the longest railroad bridge in the United States, the Thomas Viaduct. Named after the company's first president, Philip E. Thomas, the span also has the distinction of being the country's first multi-span masonry railroad bridge to be built on a curve, which was necessary to reach the Elk Ridge Plain on the other side while maintaining grade. This curved construction complicated matters, but Associate Engineer Benjamin Henry Latrobe Jr. rose to the challenge, designing a bridge with sufficient height and strength to survive the occasional flooding of the river below. During construction, many thought of the bridge as Latrobe's Folly, thinking it would collapse under its own weight. But history has proved them wrong, as the bridge is still in use almost 2 centuries later, carrying trains far heavier than were ever intended for it. It has survived numerous floods and the American Civil War, when it was actually guarded by Union troops as a critical rail link to the nation's capital. After the Civil War, the old relay house was inadequate to handle the increasing passenger traffic of the time, especially for those needing to switch trains at the junction. So in 1873, the B&O built a much larger Gothic Victorian station in the middle of the Y in the tracks. Designed by the railroad's architect, E. Francis Baldwin, the same man responsible for the Point of Rocks station, along with many others, the structure served as a ticket office, hotel, and restaurant. The ornate 4-story building, named the Viaduct Hotel, featured wraparound platforms to accommodate passengers changing trains, extravagant English gardens, and a balcony offering patrons views of the scenic Patapsco River Valley. The Viaduct Hotel was a popular place to stay in the waning years of the 19th century, but by 1900 the station and the town of Relay in general were slowly waning in importance as a major interchange point. Faster trains and the introduction of dining and sleeping cars helped to render the Viaduct Hotel obsolete. After years of decline, the station finally closed in 1938 after only 65 years of service, and the majestic Gothic structure was lost to history in 1950, being razed after over a decade of sitting vacant. Today, little remains at the site of this historic structure, although the obelisk-shaped monument commemorating the construction of the bridge that was its namesake still sits in the Y between the active rail lines. And of course, the bridge itself still lives on. So for this video, one of my goals was to film a train going over the span. Unfortunately, from the ground, this proved difficult. On the relay side, the access road into the Patapsco State Park is quite busy, with not many safe vantage points. And on the Elk Ridge side, Levering Avenue is pretty much the same situation. So I decided to take to the sky for my train watching, which proved difficult in its own right when trying to time my drone flights perfectly with approaching trains. It took a total of 4 visits to the viaduct to get all of the train footage that I wanted, but I think it was worth it with this next segment. As I was waiting for a southbound freight, a loaded coal train was coming off of the old main line at the same time. It turned out that the southbound was an empty coal train, so we got to see both legs of the journey at the same time. The southbound empty was heading down through Washington, D.C., to then head west on the Metropolitan subdivision. and the loaded coal was heading toward Baltimore. As awesome as that was, I still wanted to catch a northbound freight on the bridge. While I waited, I had plenty of time to stake out my perfect positioning. On my final day there, I was early enough to catch the MARC train that I showed at the beginning of the video. And not too long afterward, I got the freight train that I was waiting for. Even though it was a short train, it was enough for me. Plus, I figure I can always go back and continue my hunt for more interesting trains later. In 1964, the Thomas Viaduct was designated a National Historic Landmark, and in 2010, it was named a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark. The Thomas Viaduct has stood here for nearly 2 centuries, weathering wars, floods, and the constant passage of time. Built at a time when railroads were still an experiment, it has outlived the men who designed it and the trains it once carried. Yet it remains, strong and graceful, a bridge not just of stone, but of history. And with any luck, it will continue to stand for generations to come, a timeless reminder of what human hands can build and what time itself can't easily erase. Well, I hope you enjoyed this visit to the historic Thomas Viaduct. I got a lot more train footage than I expected, so I'm in the editing process right now, and if I included the trail also through the Patapsco State Park, the video would be very, very long. So I'm actually going to split it up into 2 videos. I'll include the trail portion next week. And trust me, there's plenty to see there as well, including some railroad history at the end that's quite interesting. I encourage you to come back and see the second part next week. Until then, see you later.